All right, we're going to start up a new section. So, a story has come to the end, right? Thank you, Samantha. Um, a, a story has come to its end. You had the tale of Varaha, right? The big tale of Varaha with the battle with the great demon Golden Eyes, Hiranyaksha. And now that's done. So now what comes next? So at these points, these are like the lulls in the conversation where you wonder, so I guess maybe the conversation is over. Namaskar, Abhishek. And if you don't want the conversation to be over, you better think of something really fast, right? To keep it going. So that is how Shonika felt. Remember, the the outermost layer of the Bhagavatam is a conversation between Sutta and Shonika's, let's say, tribe or something. I don't know if I'm scary. Um, so when it's done, Shonika says, "Tell us more," right? So he says, "What did Swayambhuva Manu do once the earth was restored? How did the rest of the world's population manifest?" Oh my God, I'm gonna have to get rid of this. Um, hey, Mary. So we want to hear more about this. The earth was missing. The Brahma created the prototype of humans, and he said, "Go ahead. There's the earth. Go live on it. Go dwell on it." And they went to go there, and it wasn't there. So they said, "Well, it's not there. Can you do something about this?" And he said, "Not really." Then Vishnu came as a boar and helped out that situation, got the earth restored. So now what? So they say, "We want to hear more of Vidura's conversation with Maitreya." Vidura is the son of Vyas, and no less great, no less blessed, no less devoted, and extremely dear to Krishna. His elder brother and nephews were antagonistic to Krishna. So he left their palace and became completely purified by wandering the lands and wholeheartedly relying on Krishna. All right, so this is now, what's actually funny is the same thing that I would do, which would be to like rewind and try to get you guys back to this, where the story was before it forked off and ended. This is the same thing that the sutta is going to do. It's just kind of a natural conversation topic. So he's rewinding now. He's reminding us who Vidura is. Vidura is Vyasa's son. He's just as great as Vyas. He was super close with Krishna, but he was in a family where half of the family were really against Krishna, so he wound up leaving the palace, leaving them, and wandering around. And that's where he met Maitreya, the foremost among those who comprehend the truth, at his ashram in Hardwar. That's some interesting information. Apparently, this conversation is happening at Maitreya's ashram in Hardwar, which is kind of a touristy place these days, isn't it? A little bit like yoga tourism. Certainly, purifying Harikatha flowed between them like the river Ganga, which destroys all impurities because it comes from Hari's lotus feet. "You are blessed," Shonika concluded. "Sing this Harikatha to us elaborately and generously. We will never get tired or bored. We never tire of drinking the nectar of Hari's playful pastimes because we appreciate the value of true bliss." Sutta had painstakingly learned of the conversation between Vidura and Maitreya, so he fixed his mind on the old attractive and requested Shonika and the Naimisharanya sages to listen carefully. So Sutta's kind of happy because he took a lot of effort to learn what Vidura and Maitreya said to each other what they discussed, what they described. And now somebody's asking to hear about it. So he says, great, this is my moment. I took a lot of time to learn this, and now I have a chance to teach it. So he says, all right, I'm going to explain it to you. And then he says to them, basically, Vidura is asking the same questions that you just asked. So he says, like you, Vidura was thrilled to hear about Hari taking the form of a boar and playfully lifting the earth from the bottom of the universe with his own inherent powers. Hey, Heta. Sorry, I started a little early today. While casually destroying Hiranyaksha. Like you, he wanted to hear more. Like you, he asked Maitreya, what did the father of forefathers do after creating the forefathers who would populate the world? Father of forefathers is Brahma. Forefathers are like Marichi, etc., all the way down to Swayambhuva Manu. How did those forefathers, beginning with Marichi and ending with Swayambhuva Manu, manifest the world's population under Brahma's guidance? My voice does sound weird. What species did they create with their wives? That's, you can see that they're not humans, right? They can create various species. Did they decide to work independently of one another, or did they work all together? Please tell me, for you are a philosopher who knows the mysterious ways of things. So basically Vidura says, all right, this whole story went on a fork about the rescuing of the earth by Varaha. Now, before we went off on that fork, you were telling me about these 10 progenitors and how it came to Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa and how they were able to create children. And then those children were able to mate with the progenitors. So now what happened? How did they generate all the species and life forms that inhabit the universe? Tell me the details. Did they work together? Did they separate and work separately? What did they do? What kind of things did they create? Suta then set out to explain Maitreya's reply. Now Maitreya's reply is also interesting because he also does the very same thing. He backtracks. Hello, everybody. I guess I started a little bit earlier than you expected. I see everybody's showing up now. Maitreya is going to do the same thing. Maitreya is also going to back up. So this is a basic technique in conversation. If your conversation goes off on a fork and you want to resume the conversation, you don't start at the point of the fork because the person won't have the context anymore. You back up a little bit and then go forward. So that's what's going to happen. Suta set out to explain Maitreya's reply to these questions, which began with a review of what he had said prior to telling the story of Varaha, and extended itself into a fuller description of the 10th aspect of creation, the creation of divinities. So you're going to get a review of all the stuff that's kind of been said so far in the whole part 3. You're going to get a review of it. Everything said by Maitreya. And you're going to get more details, especially when it comes to certain points. So here we go. Any question? No question, right? It's just simple setup for the next thing. So Maitreya begins, he's going to review the primeval evolutions. These are the evolutions that happen before there are living entities inhabiting specific life forms. In the beginning, the Supreme caused time, which carries inscrutable fate, to catalyze the 3 qualities of nature and produce the great totality. You remember that if you were present in the previous streams. Driven by the passionate momentum of the living being's destiny, the great totality interacted with nature's 3 qualities to evolve all the primordial elements and so on. Just a review. By the power of the divine, these elements combined to produce an egg with golden effulgence. You remember that? After the elements had evolved out, they weren't able to combine, and then Vishnu went into them to get them to combine. So super fast summary. That egg floated on the universal ocean without doing anything noteworthy for more than 1,000 universal years. Finally, the master entered and lay down within it, sprouting a lotus from his navel. The lotus was more brilliant than 1,000 suns. So there's some more details here. It's interesting that the egg form of the universal life form was dormant also. It had a gestation period for a very long time. So, all you guys, all people who are super coming from super religious backgrounds and Christian backgrounds and want to have this Bible concept where there's like, bam, first day, choom. There's like there's always been creatures. God created everything, and there's never a time when there was just no life. It's not the way Bhagavatam describes it. There's huge spans of time, enormous spans of time and space that are basically empty, according to Bhagavatam, which they're basically empty in the sense that they're there to they're part of the machine that churns out the content that can become the life forms later on. To put it to you this way, like most of what you see on your computer is your screen. Right? So for us experiencing the computer, everything is the screen. But actually 90% of what goes into making a computer is not the screen. It's the same thing with the universe. Most of what you see is on Earth. And you see life forms and people and stuff like that on Earth. But 90% of what's in the universe isn't on Earth. It's all this other stuff out there that appears to be kind of useless, but it's not useless at all. It's part of the machine that generates the materials and conditions by which the Earth can exist. So the egg floated on the universal ocean without doing anything noteworthy for more than 1,000 universal years. Finally, the master entered and laid down within it, sprouting a lotus from his navel. The lotus was more brilliant than 1,000 suns, for it contained the consciousness of all living entities. The self-born creator was the first to appear from that lotus. Now we're going to get a review of the primary creations. So that's your review all the way from the beginning of the manifestation of the universe all the way up to the birth of Brahma. It just got summarized. Now, Brahma's activities. The all-attractive who slept upon the waters in the egg empowered Brahma to recreate the worlds as they had previously existed. After creating the worlds, that's the first thing he did. Remember, we said he made the locations first. After creating those worlds, Brahma fashioned the darkness, manifest nearby as a shadow, into 5 degrees of ignorance. Remember that? Capable of captivating souls in illusion. Those 5 ignorances are, hey Sarah, darkness, confusion, Sarah 5-5. Darkness, confusion, bewilderment, anger, and blinding rage. Then he created the great beings mentioned previously, the 4 scholar children and the Rudras. He then created his beloved sages after controlling his senses with austerity, learning, yogic practice, and mature realization. Each sage received from Brahma a part of his realization: yoga, mastery, discipline, learning, and renunciation. Each sage manifests from, we talked about that, particular part of Brahma, and therefore had a particular aspect of Brahma's expertise. So there's your summary of the initial beings that Brahma created. He created the 4 sages, the 4 kids, then the Rudras, kind of almost by mistake or by their own doing. And then he really carefully created 11. It's supposed to be 10, but it came out to be 11 Prajapatis, or very learned beings that are going to be able to co-create along with Brahma. And each one had a particular power of Brahma. Now a little more interesting kind of new details on the thing, how the monsters and gods were created, and then the demons. Brahma was unhappy with ignorance. He had created the ignorance, but he was unhappy with it. So this unhappiness had a further effect. It generated guardian monsters known as Yaksha and Raksha. Then he cast off his unhappiness, and they used it. The Yaksha and Raksha used it to create night, hunger, and thirst. Overwhelmed with hunger and thirst, these monsters rushed towards Brahma, shouting, "Eat him! Don't protect him!" They're called Yaksha and Raksha, which means to protect, protectors. So why are they called protectors? It's very interesting that monsters are called protectors. Raksha means the protectors. And what they're doing is they cover things up with darkness so that you can't see them. They protect the thing that they cover with darkness. So they're protecting natural resources mostly. They're protecting the universe. They're protecting this part of the world from you. So they make it scary for you. They don't want you to go there. They keep you out of the caves, so you don't mine out everything from the caves. They keep you out of the forests, so you don't cut it all down. So they're called rakshas. But they got very hungry after creating hunger and thirst. They got very hungry themselves, and then they said, forget protecting, let's eat. So Brahma got scared, and he said, my children, don't eat me, protect me. But they would not relent, so Brahma frightened them away by glowing brilliantly. The monsters are basically darkness, right? They're the result of Brahma's unhappiness with darkness, and then he gives them darkness to fashion into things that they can use, so they get dispelled by light. That's why when your kid's scared at night, you turn on the light and everything's fine in a second. The monsters live in darkness and they go away from light. So when Brahma couldn't get them to cooperate with him, he just turned on the light. He just created light from himself, and then they were like, whoa, they ran away. Alarmed, Brahma, okay, great. Then he set aside his brilliance, and it generated the wise and effulgent gods who used it to create the daylight. You get that? So this is a new angle or new information about how the monsters. Just previously, it was just said that he designed them and created them, monsters and gods, etc. But now you're getting information about how the monsters were created from his unhappiness and associated with the darkness, and the gods were created from his power and confidence and associated with brightness. And so the monsters created darkness in the universe, like nighttime, and the gods created brightness. That's why the gods are always associated with sun. The gods are almost always associated with the sun, and the monsters with night. Are the monsters always in pain? Are they always hungry? That's a good question. Let me not give you an answer right away. Let me think about it. There are some. They're famous Chinese ghosts. Actually, in China, they're famous. And there's this particular type mentioned in the Vedas that are popular in China that have that quality of being hungry all the time. But I don't know if they all are. You guys are so fancy about everything. It boggles my mind sometimes. The simplest things you guys make into these big fancy things. All right. Demons. Now, what are the demons? So we know and this is good information for you guys to hold on to, is that generally people talk about Vedic stuff, talk about gods and demons. But actually, they're missing the picture. It's gods, demons, monsters. Yeah, the hungry ghosts, Simone. It's gods, demons, monsters. Really, monsters are more of an antithesis to gods than demons are. Demons are like a middle ground. And here you'll find. Now, Maitreya is going to explain where the demons came from. That they came from the genitals of the brilliant form. So Brahma set aside his brilliance to become the gods. From the genitals of the brilliance, you get things called demons, a different type of divinity. They're gods, but they're not as intelligently oriented. It says they shone less brightly than the effulgent gods because their splendor was dimmed by excessive lust. Wanting sex, so they're a bit hungry all the time. Wanting sex, they approached Brahma. It says they wanted sex. There's Brahma. Let's have sex. So there's very homosexuality, very primally displayed in the Bhagavatam early in the universal scheme. It's just a thing. Like, you want to have sex, you have sex with somebody. Whether they're the correct gender is another issue. It wasn't necessarily pointed out But huh? What? So anyway, they decided they wanted to have sex with Brahma. Brahma at first laughs. Me? What? But when they became shameless and would not relent, he gets a little bit of his own karma here. I'm not sure if this is before or after Vak. At first, Brahma laughed, but when they became shameless and would not relent, he fled in fear and anger. So he also had to do this Mrigashirsha thing of running away from a sexual aggressor. Where did he run? This reminds me of not a funny point, but a ridiculous point. I won't go off on a tangent. He ran to Hari, who takes away all problems and bestows all blessings, and who affectionately shows himself to his devotees in a form perfectly suited to his devotion. If you're Brahma, where do you run for help? Everybody runs to you for help. If you're Brahma, where do you run to help? You either got Shiva or Vishnu. So he decided to go to Hari. So Sean's saying ignorance has no bounds. Physical needs make people do crazy things and make them act like demons. This is true, but I don't want you to think that the Bhagavatam is saying that homosexuality is the result of lust. It's not saying that. It's saying there was no women around. And these guys wanted sex. So that's the way that the Kama Sutra describes it too. Okay, good. Just make sure. I'm glad you're not saying that, but people will say that. Believe me. People will say that. The Kama Sutra also says the same thing. It says, oh, yeah, homosexuality. Great. But why? Like that's their attitude. Yeah, okay, if that works. Yeah, that's the Kama Sutra attitude towards it. In some cases it works, but it's not as enjoyable. It's not as easy or natural or something. It's not as easy. It doesn't click as easily. So it's different than the Vedic concept of homosexuality is very different than the Christian concept, which is that it's bad, it's evil. The Vedic concept is, yeah, it's fine, but in most cases, people wouldn't be into it. So it's the same thing with these people right here, with these demons. They want to have sex. There's a guy around. There's no girls around. So they get into it. Okay, so he goes to Hari. He says, trying to carry out your will, I created offspring, but now those very children are wickedly pursuing me for sex. Prabhu, you alone can relieve the distress of suffering people. You alone can foil those who are adverse to your intentions. Hari, who sees into the heart, could understand Brahma's pain and fear. Cast aside this form that they desire, he advised. Brahma, oh, this is so interesting. I forgot this story. So what did Vishnu advise him? What did Brahma say? He said, my kids want to have sex with me. They're chasing me. I created these guys and now they're chasing me for sex. It's so ironic how this is the mirror image of how Vak felt about him. So I would really like to, I'm going to ask around to see if this is chronologically before or after the Vak incident. So Vishnu says, well, what you should do is get rid of the form that they are lusting for. So Brahma cast off this form and it seemed to become a girl with intoxicated eyes, wearing tinkling anklets on lotus-like feet, and a shining golden belt over attractive hips. I think you're going to find out why the sunset is demon time and also very romantic. Brahma cast off his form and it seemed to become a girl with intoxicated eyes, wearing tinkling anklets and lotus-like feet, and a shining golden belt over attractive hips, barely hidden by thin cloth. Her breasts pressed together and embraced one another. There's one funny translation of this, which says there was no intervening space between the breasts. I just think it's so humorous to describe a situation which is so sexy with the terminology. Like the breasts admitted of no intervening space. So they're pushed together. That's how big they were. Her breasts pressed together and embraced one another. Her nose, teeth, and smile were lovely. Her playful glances were coyly hidden behind thick locks of dark hair. Seeing her, the demons were completely captivated and forgot all about Brahma. Good job, Vishnu. Great idea. Just make something more beautiful than you, and they're going to forget about you. So use this form that you have to make something to attract them away from you. And when they saw this gorgeous woman, they said, "Whoa, what shapely beauty! Oh, what calm patience! Oh, what fresh youthfulness suddenly walks among us lusty souls, although she herself seems untouched by lust." Wondering that is amazing. That's a powerful woman. She's walking fearlessly amongst lusty people, untouched by lust. Wondering who she was, they hid their selfish intentions behind very respectful manners and inquired, "O lady with lovely hips, who are you? Where are you from? O powerful woman, why have you come to us? Why do you tease us, poor souls, with the priceless treasure of your beauty?" She simply continued playing with a ball. "Whomever you may be, dear lady," the demons continued, "it's our good fortune to have the opportunity to look upon you. The way you let us watch you play with the ball arouses our imagination. Your lotus-like feet gracefully patter about as you bounce this ball lower and lower with the palm of your hand. Playfully bending lower and lower, it seems like the weight of your heavy breasts has tired and defeated your slender waist. Your eyes are peaceful, and your hair is beautifully tied." Then it says the demons embraced or took possession of this extremely desirable woman, and from her they produced the sunset. So they were able to satisfy their desires. And what did they produce? The sunset. Can you, now knowing that she's the womb of the sunset, now this also shows you why there's demons roaming at sunset and why it's not a good idea to have sex at sunset, and also why sunset is romantic and attractive and sexually stimulating. Now listen to the knowing that she's sunset. Listen to some of the details in the story again. She's playing with a ball, and the ball is going lower and lower and lower. And it's so beautiful. Why is the sunset so beautiful? That's all of her beauty surrounding the sunset. So that's Brahma, actually. It's Brahma. That beauty that's associated with sunset is Brahma. It's his beauty. And what he did was he took the potency of his beauty to create this woman. It distracted all of the demons, and then it becomes the sunset. And so the demons are always having sex at sunset. Other divinities. Okay, that was cool. I love the awesomeness of the Bhagavatam. It's like that when you go to the temples, you see pictures of the temples in India with erotic, like hardcore erotic stuff on them. They don't pull any punches. They do pull some punches in the Bhagavatam, and you don't get graphic descriptions, but they get pretty up front and center with the descriptions. Okay, now, other divinities. After this incident, how did Brahma feel? He smiled. It says Brahma smiled deeply, appreciating the fragrance of the beauty he was capable of producing. So he was very, very pleased with himself that he could be so beautiful. And the fragrance of that woman became another creature. It was actually the fragrance of the woman the fragrance of her beauty made Brahma smile. And then this smile generated Gandharva. Those of you who speak Indian languages know that the word Gandha means smell. No, it's not Brahma and his lowest, it's Brahma's beauty. Gandha means smell. This is why they're called Gandharva, because they're generated from the scent of Brahma as a female at the sunset. They're generated from the smile. So the Gandharvas, the nature of the Gandharvas is very, very romantic. They're like Cupid type people. They're very romantic, angelic type people, beings. They're also sunset associated. This is yet another reason why sunset is actually quite romantic. They're very Venus type people, so they're very, very great with music and dance and everything. And it seems to me that the Gandharvas are the male version, and then what was also generated from the smell was Apsara. And Apsara are the female version. It seems to me, I might be wrong, but it seems to me that there's one species, but the male form of the species is called Gandharva, and the female is called Apsara. Apsara is like nymphs in Greek, Roman stuff. They call them nymphs. The head of the Gandharvas is Vishvavasu. And when he cast away the smile, so by thinking about the beauty and remembering the fragrance of the beauty that he was able to become, he smiled, and that smile became Gandharvas and Apsaras. And then when he put the smile, took the smile off, he used the smile to create the beautiful light of the moon. So the beautiful moonlight is the same as Brahma's color of his teeth or something, his smile that shows the white teeth. And it's also why moonlight is romantic. Moonlight, cupids, nymphs, music, dance, sunset, all these stuffs are produced at this time. Now, I don't think the Gandharvas guarded Soma. I could be wrong. Brahma, now it's sunset. Now it's past sunset, right? It's past sunset, and he's created moonlight. So now he gets sleepy. Brahma then becomes sleepy and yawns, generating ghosts and devils with wild hair, dressed in nothing but the four directions. So his sleepiness becomes ghosts, and the yawns become devils. When he saw them, he closed his eyes and cast off his fatigue. They took possession of his fatigue and used it to create sleep. During sleep, excrement oozes from the body, especially from the eyes and mouth. And ghosts and devils exploit this excrement to possess people. Interesting information. So basically, when he became sleepy, maybe the yawn actually means some drool or something came out of his mouth. That created the ghosts and the devils. And because it's associated with Brahma's drool, ghosts and devils, evil spirits, are drawn to the drool of people. And sleep, they're associated with sleep. So this is why you don't really commonly ever encounter ghostly experiences when you're wide awake and walking around. You usually encounter them when you're asleep. And that's what they are, really. Their physical form isn't in the waking world. It's in the mental world. Now, he cast off his fatigue, so he felt rested now. Now he felt rested and powerful, so he generated powerful masters of mystic technologies, the Sadhya. He gave them his powerful form, from which they created techniques for obtaining rewards from the gods. Techniques. So after he slept, he felt powerful and strong, and that generated these gods called Sadhyas, and the Sadhyas are the ones who generate techniques and technologies for getting things done. Amazed by the sadhya he had generated, Brahma felt mysterious and beyond comprehension. When he created the woman, he felt so pleased and beautiful, and then that generated the Gandharvas and the Apsaras and the moonlight. When he created the sadhyas, he felt like, wow, I'm so like mysterious and powerful and magical. And from that feeling of power and mystery, he generated Pitri, who are very mysterious plutonic underworld gods. He gave them his mysterious form, from which they created rituals to empower the spirits of the departed. So all the rituals which are for getting things, the Vedic rituals that are for getting things, like, oh, do you want to become more powerful? Or do you want to have a better harvest, get more rich? Those rituals were all devised by the sadhyas. The rituals that are for helping your ancestors get to, get relieved of their karmas and so forth, those come from the Pitris. This is interesting, so I'll keep going. Usually I go a little longer on Fridays. Yeah, we'll go to the end of the chapter, which will end up with humanity. And this is kind of just like the preamble. Like in Star Wars, when the text rolls on the screen. This is like that part of the movie about Kapila. By feeling rested and powerful, blah, blah. Amazed by the sadhya he had generated. Okay, then you get the Pitris. The feeling that he could now accomplish anything generated the incredibly powerful Siddha. So it's going like this. Let's review, actually. How did it go? It started off with a sadness. Yeah. After creating the 10 main progenitors, then he goes through this emotional situation where he creates all kinds of other stuff. From his sadness that his whole creativity is based on illusion and darkness. From that sadness, he got monsters that cover up things in darkness, keep things hidden. He got attacked by them, but he saved himself from that attack by becoming really bright, driving out the darkness. And then the brightness generated the gods. But there's a subtype of gods who are generated from the genitals of the bright form. And those are called demons, or asura. So it's not that asuras are not gods, they're gods. But they just have more lust, more personal need. Gods are more philanthropic than asuras. And because they had lust, they wanted to have sex with Brahma. But Vishnu said, why don't you make a form of yourself that they can have sex with? So he made a beautiful woman. He made himself into a beautiful woman at the sunset. And then the demons used that. So actually, look at that paradigm. It's very interesting. The monsters created the darkness. The gods created the light. And in between them is the twilight, which is the asuras. They're not really monsters, and they're not really exactly gods either. They're not destructive like monsters, but they're not philanthropic like gods. They're powerful like both. Okay, so then, after he did that, he smiled, thinking about how beautiful he was. Then he created very beautiful things. I don't know if you'll hear about the sunrise. This is an interesting point. Then he smiled because he felt beautiful, and then he created, that smile created Gandharvas and Apsaras, the musicians and the pleasure gods, and also the moonlight. Then he felt sleepy, and that sleepiness generated ghosts and devils. Then he threw off his sleepiness and became powerful and rested. That power created sadhyas. The sadhyas are the guys who devise the Vedic rituals. What means teach you how to use your power. Why is Indra a god and not an asura? Because he's a child of Aditi. So he's considered Aditya. And why is Varuna considered the king of the asuras? Because he's an asura. He was born he's from that group. So are the demons only lusty? They don't do other negative acts. Well, they're lusty, so they'll do anything. They'll do anything. So if doing something good satisfies their desires, then they'll be happy to do something good. If doing something bad satisfies their desires, then they're happy to do something bad. That's how they act. So then he created the sadhyas, who teach us how to use our power. Then he felt mysterious. Each one of these guys is being born from his emotion. When he felt powerful, it generated sadhyas. Then he felt mysterious. Like, how am I able to generate these sadhyas who can teach people how to use power? I'm very mysterious. Then that mysteriousness generated the pitris, who are these ancestral underworld spirits. The pitris teach people how to deal with the afterlife. Anil, so they have their titles by birth and not by character. The character is connected with their birth. Otherwise, what's astrology? Then after feeling mysterious, what was it? After he felt mysterious? He felt like, God, I could do anything. So the feeling of confidence, like, it generated the siddhas. And then he had a feeling that he could do anything, which generated the siddhas, and then a feeling that he understood everything, that generated the vidyadhara. Vidyadhara are the greatest scientists and scholars. Granting them his powerful learned form, they were empowered to create valuable things too subtle to be perceived by the external senses. Indra is very philanthropic. Actually, he's taking care of the rain. Rain is a very important philanthropic thing. Just because you're primarily philanthropic doesn't mean that you're not materialistic. They're materialistic. The gods are material beings, so they have selfish desires. They act in philanthropic ways. Looking in a mirror, Brahma appreciated his beauty. This generated humanoids. That's cool. But humanoids, all types of humans. Looking in a mirror, Brahma appreciated his beauty. This generated humanoids who are extremely devoted to their lifelong spouse, yet cannot produce offspring. So it's not humans. There's other humanoids besides humans, and these are called Kinara Kimpurusha. He granted his reflection to these Kinara Kimpurusha, who used it to create the songs they sing at dawn. Dawn. As couples glorifying his deeds. But Kinara Kimpurusha, they couple and they marry, and they're monogamous. But they can't produce children. They were like kind of a quasi-humanoid race. and they're associated with the dawn. So again, they're like a middle type of creature. They're not exactly a god. They're not exactly a monster. They're not exactly humans either, and they're not exactly animals. Frustrated that these beings could not produce children, Brahma fell on the ground with all his limbs outstretched. His sprawling hair became the Sarpa and Naga. Oh, you guys had asked about Naga. Cruel serpents who slither and coil with their huge necks. He cast off his frustration, and the serpents used it to generate envy and anger. So, at the end, he wanted to create humans who have the special quality of sexual reproduction. Humans and lower species to do sexual reproduction. But his first attempt at humans weren't able to do it. And then he got frustrated with that, and that made Nagas and serpents. Now, humanity. Relieved of frustration, Brahma felt very inspired. This is the thing of humans. The primary quality of humans. The primary quality of Nagas is that they're born from frustration, and therefore they have a lot of envy and anger in them. Each one of these things. The primary qualities of Kimpurusha Kinnara is that they're very beautiful and devoted to their partner. So for example, they're like humanoid birds, like a lot of Egyptian type of imageries. They're feathered and peacock's feathers and mixed with humanoid forms and stuff like that. But with humans, what is the trait of Brahma that generated the humans? It's his sense of inspiration. I don't know what aliens look like, Justin, so how do I know if they look like aliens? There's no mention of aliens here, by the way, because you don't have the same sense of planet. The Bhagavatam really doesn't talk about planets, but it talks about realms. So when he was relieved of his frustration, he felt very inspired. He then generated humans from his own body, the Manu. They would care for the world and populate it successfully. By the way, just as a little aside, I do believe that the Jehovah concept is Brahma. The God of the Abrahamic traditions is Brahma. And if you study these things and how the Jehovah is the fertility, the Prajapati, the original Prajapati. Originally, Jehovah was the fertility god. Hence the circumcision. And then the creator, it's always so stressed that he's the creator, he's the creator, he's the creator. And the father, and is the grandfather figure. He's very Brahma. This probably was a Brahma worshipping strain of Vedic civilization that wound up becoming Abrahamic traditions like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So here's another kind of hint, like he generated the humans from his own body. That sounds very Christian. The Manu. You know, this thing of like taking a rib and making another one. That's basically how Brahma made Manu and Satarup. They would care for the world and populate it successfully. So the human beings are noteworthy for having a lot of rajas, which means a lot of inspiration, a lot of passion. We have a lot of ambition. That's part of our important quality. That's part of one of the things that makes us what we are and makes us do so many karmas. We have a lot of ambition. So the destiny of a living entity changes the most when the living being incarnates as a human. And when it's incarnated in as a god or any one of these types of creatures or as an animal, it doesn't change very much. The destiny is just kind of coming out. But new destiny gets created rapidly when you're a human being. So because of this fact that we're constantly driven to do things, because we're born from Brahma's inspiration. All those who were already created congratulated Brahma when Brahma finally made the humans. So again, this is unabashedly human-centric. But the universe is human-centric in the sense that the humans are the best opportunity. They're not at one end of the spectrum of power or at the other end of the spectrum of power, but they're this perfect balance of mortality and immortality and intelligence and passion that they can really change their destiny dramatically and rapidly, and can even get moksha, enlightenment, and get out of this cycle of false incarnation. So when the humans were created, everybody who had previously been created, they all said, "Oh, creator of the universe, this is your finest work. For they will perform the deeds that nourish us all." So these are the guys that are going to do all the yagyas, that give us power and all that stuff. And so you did a great thing. From their point of view. This is why they love humans, because humans worship them. But from my point of view, as a human, the reason why the human is this most special is because it can avail most easily and quickly of knowledge. Any questions there at the end? That's the end. That's the end of chapter 20. So now, this, like I said, was like the rolling text at the beginning of a Star Wars movie. It's like the preamble to the movie about Kapila. So the next section you're going to get, Vidura is going to say, all right, now Manu was created. Now, who are Manu's descendants? And you already know, briefly was mentioned Priyavrata Uttanapad, and 3 daughters, Devahuti, and 2 others, Ruchi. So you already know that they had these 5 kids. Now, Vidura wants to know what kids these kids had, and that's how you're going to get to the story of Devahuti and how she had a son named Kapila, who was an incarnation of Vishnu. So it's going to lead up to Kapila and the conversation between her and her son. It's going to span many, many chapters and is one of the most important sections in the early Bhagavatam. Is the time after sunset and before darkness a positive time for sex? Maybe. Thank you, Miss Vinay. Basically, one thing that you have to bear in mind is these beings are not always living. When they talk about, when Kardama, what was it, Kardama? When Kashyapa tells Diti, hey, it's sunset now, we shouldn't have sex right now. Don't forget that not only are they not living in Kali Yuga, they're not even human beings. And so when you don't expect the same results in Kali Yuga as a human. It's not really, it's not really possible to use Vedic technology and all that kind of stuff in this age. No more possible than it would be to use a computer when electricity is not around. So what you really have to do in Kali Yuga is focus on the absolute essence of everything. And because only the essence is going to be powerful enough to still have an effect and work. And so as far as the concept of the science of birthing good children goes, the essence of it is that the character of the parents is transmitted to the character of the child. So it doesn't really matter what time of day and what direction you're facing, etc., etc., etc. But it matters what kind of person you are and what kind of frame of mind you are in and how you feel. So bear that in mind. Being a human can be so hard because we're ignorant. Actually, animals are more ignorant than we are, but what's hard about being a human being is that we're right in between, that we realize our ignorance, that we feel that we come up against the wall of our ignorance. That's the hardest part. Are nagas sterile? How do they reproduce? The creatures that don't reproduce sexually, they can reproduce mystically, just like Brahma is producing all of these beings without sexual reproduction. So creatures like nagas, they can reproduce mystically, but it doesn't happen prolifically. And that's one reason why they live for a very long time, and they don't have that many children. And also, it's advantageous to beings like apsaras and nagas that they don't have kids, because they can have sex simply for pleasure without any worries, and they don't have menstrual cycles or anything like that. So that's, in a sense, an advantage that non-humans have when it comes to sexuality. But when it comes to reproduction, nagas, etc., they can make children, but they don't tend to do it sexually. They tend to do it mystically. Later in cosmic history, you can get crossbreeding, as is clear from the fact that the children of Manu were able to marry the progenitors. So you can get crossbreeding. So you could get human parenting mixed with nagas, and then it can become complicated. These ghosts and devils and monsters, do they have any connection to the children of Rudra? Not really. They're a different category. Rudras are Rudras. However, Rudra becomes their primary boss. Rudra is their primary manager. So they all follow him around all the time, and he organizes them. And you might think that, oh, is that denigrating to Rudra that he's hanging out with misfits? No, that's because he's the only one who can deal with these people. That shows his amazing power, is that they'll submit to Rudra. They wouldn't submit to Brahma. Of all Brahma's creatures, who are the most susceptible to avidya? Humans? No, humans are actually able to reverse avidya. You have things like trees and rocks and crystals. Those are the most covered by avidya. Can humans have the past lives of being demons or monsters? Crystal, you gotta understand that you definitely do. You definitely do have past life of being all of these things, including Brahma. Yeah, mixed creatures could live with their parents. Lava. How do you say this name? Joao Pedro Souza Matos. Wow. How to understand Sankhya philosophy? You know how you want to understand Sankhya philosophy? Come back to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because we're gonna hear Sankhya philosophy directly from the mouth of the founder of the Sankhya school, Kapila. All right, guys. Have a great weekend, and come back on Monday, and we'll get into Kapila's parents and how they met each other. Kapila is the founder of Sankhya. The art of the cliffhanger. Hey Vidya, nice to see you.